Scott, good Tuesday morning. Let's talk.
You too, Ben.
Good morning to you. Let's talk commodities here. And it seems like they're getting a little bit of a lift here with the dollar lower this Tuesday morning.
Yeah, after last week, maybe a little bit of profit taking ahead of the long weekend here, and we're right back at it today. You see gold, you see oil, copper, right back at it. And that's ahead of, big inflation numbers this week. It's ahead of the OPEC Plus meeting at the end of the week here. So, you're the one that always talks about the trend as your friend. And, I think we just took a little bit of a break last week, a little bit of a reset, and here we are back at it.
Crude up 1.75% right now. It's $79 a barrel, still holding below that $80 key threshold, the upper extreme we saw recently, which raised some concerns, some eyebrows up around $80 tied to Iran's potential involvement in the war in the Middle East. Obviously, that seems to have cooled, right? Prices have come off, but this is an ongoing event. And even over the weekend, we saw tensions kind of building, right? So I think it's important to remind traders that this is something to stay tuned, dialed in on. Headlines could move prices at a rapid pace.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. We're not out of this, realm of geopolitical
by any means.
uncertainty at all. Not by any means at all. So I think on any pullback, at least for right now, you got to look at it as perhaps a reset. I know last week, just complete disclosure here, we got long GLD last week on the pullback. So, commodities are back at it, and it could be because of the weaker dollar. You guys had just talked about how, the Fed is probably not cutting now, but ECB, they have a meeting in a week or 2 weeks, beginning in June here, and it looks like they're going to cut first here. So I think that, may give a little bit of a lift to the dollar, but for right now, commodities are rallying on the weaker dollar.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that, right? And I think, a minute ago, you pointed to how I like to focus on trend, right, in terms of price, but we also see that as far as the fundamentals trends play out over long periods of time, right? And it does kind of seem like a lot of uncertainty, as you mentioned, in terms of the Fed, right? Policy, what comes next ultimately. We've got uncertainties in terms of geopolitics, obviously. So maybe we will continue to see these pullbacks prove to be buying opportunities in gold, for example, as we hold near these elevated levels. I mean, a reflection of some of the uncertainty, the diversification that investors are seeking.
There's no question. And until that overall sentiment changes, until that overall trend shifts, I think you do have to be in a dip buying mode for pretty much commodities across the board, especially gold and oil.
And then I feel like you also have the industrials tying into it, silver, copper, you mentioned, which have been bid, right? Pulling back a little bit off those record highs, but you have that underlying support there coming out of China and expectations that we're slowly starting to see things turn around.
No doubt about it. And especially when you talk about copper, not only are things, slowly turning around there, but you have the supply and demand issue, right? There's supply is much lower than what demand forecast is right now. So that is certainly underpinning the price of copper, as well as futures hit, last week a new all-time high. So, you've got a lot of momentum across the board here, and I just don't think you can fade the trend right now.
I feel like we do have, in many ways, a bit of balance playing out here because in some ways you have a really strong economy, right? We've actually seen prices at the pump coming off here as well. A week ago, $3.59, according to AAA, for a gallon of gas, the national average. You currently have it around $3.58. A year ago, $3.57. A month ago, $3.65. So we've kind of found that sweet spot right now amidst these geopolitical tensions, unease. It does seem like the market's had a very level-headed approach, as I've liked to reference it as, towards it all, right, Scott? And then again, this sort of feeds into what we started off the show talking about, stocks holding up or just off these all-time highs.
Sure, the market doesn't like, uncertainty, whether it's the equities, bond market, commodities. And so when you get in a period of time where things are a little bit of, complacency showing, or, you've got prices that have been accepting in a range like we are right now, then some of that, kind of optimism comes back in as the market gets used to a range that something is trading in. So the longer we go on without, big shocks to the system or big moves one way or the other, probably the more positive it is.
Speaking of shocks, looking ahead to some of the data this week, obviously it seems like at the top of the list you got the PCE numbers, the inflation figures due out later Friday.
No doubt about it. And ahead of that, you've got all the Fed heads talking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Kashkari started it off today, but all eyes absolutely are going to be on Friday. Is it going to be a make or break for the market? No, but what it will probably do is give us more of a direction about what the Fed may do in September, not June or July, but in September. And, you know, the recent trend, and I say recent trend because we're only looking at one or two data points, is that maybe inflation has moderated a little bit. That would be the perfect scenario for the Fed if this report comes out at least in line on Friday. That would give I think the markets actually more confidence of one or possibly two cuts for the year. I know you guys were just talking about, you and Phil. I think he said, two cuts on the table. I happen to agree with that, but this Friday can go a long way to telling us that.
Scott, kind of moving away from gold, but in a similar fashion, right? We've seen Bitcoin recently to all-time highs, tying into what we've seen in terms of that risk-on type sentiment. We've seen the diversification aspect. I mean, there's multiple factors that are contributing to the rally we've seen. What have you been watching most recently in terms of crypto?
It's very interesting because yesterday, early in the day, we saw over 70,000. We saw a big rally. Then we saw it come off a little bit. But really, crypto has been moving pretty much lockstep with how the dollar has been moving. And this sell-off, not sell-off, but dollar lower today, I'm surprised Bitcoin is not a bit higher right now. But again, I think the trend there is also, if it's risk on across other assets, it's going to be risk on in crypto right now. And it really wouldn't surprise me leading into the number at the end of the week here to see this number stabilize and modify or just kind of be in this range here. And if we get a number that's in line or a little bit weaker, I think we get all-time highs in Bitcoin.
Yeah, kind of sticking with that trend is your friend, right? I mean, here you can see bottom left to top right, we're in a wide range consolidation area, but somewhat random at current levels. But the bulls are looking for continuation rather than change. Scott, appreciate you joining us, sharing part of your Tuesday with us. Hope you enjoyed your holiday weekend. Scott Bauer, CEO of Prosper Trading Academy.